Hello, everybody. Welcome to Film Family. Today, we're going to be counting down the top 10 action movies of the 2010s. It's been an interesting decade for action movies. It never really, I think, reached the plateaus of the 2000s, which, in my opinion, is the best decade for action movies ever. There's like an incalculable amount of fantastic action movies.
80s.
Definitely not. They don't have
2000.
even
What?
close
2014 is like a strong year for me.
Anyway.
What's in the 2000s?
like literally everything. But anyway,
Besides my list.
Action subjective.
so yeah, it's all subjective, but it was a solid decade. You saw a lot of continuation from the 2000s. You saw a lot of foreign movies doing successfully. They weren't really kind of as I think prevalent as they were in maybe like the 90s, when I think foreign movies had like pretty much all the big action movies except a select few. But still, it's been a really solid decade, and I want to say that we based our picks, I think, in different ways, but I based mine off of the quality of the action more than the movie. However, I still had the movie in account. Mm-hmm. Prince said to me,
I got you. My action, you get points for explosions because that's pretty good. Hand to hand is awesome, and gun and weapons, that's like peak performance right there. And it has nothing to do with the story or how it's shot pretty much whatsoever on my list.
Okay, so I definitely, mine's not quite the same as that, but I do have some, I guess, more leniency towards some of the filmmaking elements.
And mine I have a lot of series in there, so you'll see how I did it, but I'm a sucker for those series kind of thing when something
like
can
1, 2, and 3.
Yes, and there's some that I didn't put 2 and 3 in there because they kind of soiled it. But I mean, I kind of did a mixture of both in terms of like it had to have great action, but I had to remember, like I had to like the story. Otherwise,
well, for me, like if there was if there was a film with absolutely excellent action and a pretty bad story, and a film with an incredible story and like really good action, that film might take the edge on my list.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
okay.
but
my bottom 3 has like horrible story, awesome action.
Okay,
just
anyway.
to let you know.
So yeah,
I got some of
that's
those.
just some criteria.
They're on all.
There's nothing to speak about.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you judge, I guess, the list, just know that. So I guess let's do our honorable mentions first, Taj.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect segue for me because Expendables is one of those movies that incredible action, and the story is just non-existent. It's basically an excuse to get all these famous stars, from the 80s and from the 90s, and get them under one roof.
What's
and just
your
blow
favorite?
things up. Yeah. Huh?
What's your favorite Expendables?
I like the first one only because it, even though like Bruce Willis wasn't in it as much and all that stuff, it's just, for me, it was like the beginning of it all. And like, it was kind of the new thing. And I was like, wow.
The new thing with the old people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That they could.
It was like the Avengers of the 80s action heroes.
It really
combined them.
It was literally like a risk. And at that time, everyone in that movie was non-existent. Like they had no career. So it was like, this just revived everyone.
Yeah, I should also say, too, the volume of action counts for me. If there's only, like, one incredible action sequence, but it's 2 minutes and the rest of the movie has no action, like, I'm not putting that movie on.
Yeah.
That is
Okay, that's a good one.
That's why Book of Eli is an honorable mention for me.
Are you
I thought
done?
it was a good action. Oh, are you done?
I had also, which you guys probably will not like, but I had the Hunger Games in there.
Yeah, that didn't make either.
Yeah,
Their action wasn't like awesome.
The
first one, because it reminded me of Battle Royale in terms of the movie and the book, and it's like I like that idea of dystopia and the fighting among peers in that way, and so it didn't make my top 10 only because it kind of got worse as it went along. But the first one was something, even though it was a copy of Battle Royale, it was something unique to American audience.
Is it?
I have a lot, so I'm just going to trim it down. Machete. The reason why I have to say that is because I saw all 3 of them in theaters.
There's 3?
I think so,
God.
yeah. I'm pretty sure there's 3, and I saw all of them in there. There's no way to describe this movie. It's Danny Trejo kicking people's
I love
butts
Danny
the whole
Trejo,
movie.
too.
Speaking of, moving into the next one, Badass, 1 through 3. They also have Donald Glover and Danny Trejo again.
I've
Pretty
never
much the
heard
same
of that
thing,
movie.
but it's super awesome. They're more like Netflix movies. 2 Guns. Thought that was really good with Denzel and Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, and it's
I have to throw Baby Driver in there, not like in a disrespectful way. I thought it was a really good movie, but as an action movie, it was mostly like car driving action, so that didn't really.
Yeah, it didn't make my list.
That didn't make my list, but it was a really good movie. And I just wanted to say that.
Okay, good.
I got a lot worse ones in there, but we'll skip them.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So I just have a couple. Yeah. So Avengers: Infinity War and the first Avengers, two movies that missed my list, but had really great action sequences. I'm not one of those people who shun CGI. I do think sometimes it can be overused to cover up some filmmaking, weaknesses, but I still think that when it's done right, it can be really well done, and that's something for me that I see a lot in the best Marvel movies. I also put Dredd on there, which I love. It's so brutal, but it's just really well choreographed.
When he shoots her off the ledge.
And also, I really wanted to put one of these movies, and it just missed out my list, but I love all three of the Mission Impossible movies that came out this decade. Prince doesn't like them, but he likes Machete, so
Yeah.
do with that what you will.
I would rather watch Fast and Furious, which I definitely would.
He just said that. So, yeah. I don't know what my favorite is. Probably Rogue Nation, but I really like all three of them. They're all so
Did you forget about The Mummy, which was like the secret Mission Impossible?
It's not a Mission Impossible.
Almost was.
Anyway, so yeah, I like all three of those quite a bit. And yeah, that's it. Oh, and there's one other movie, Act of Valor, which definitely isn't an incredible movie based on the plot, but I thought the way the action sequences were filmed were a breath of fresh air. And I remember I used to like that movie a lot. So yeah, let's get into our list.
So this list was something I'm pretty confident in, but it's also something that I tried not to double up like from my previous list. So there's some new ones in there that you're probably not expecting, but it's because if I already mentioned it in the comic one. This is just me because I was trying to be different, But so there's some that skated in that probably you guys will laugh at, but
this is just gonna be hilarious all the way
no,
around.
I'm pretty. I mean, taken 2 and 3. And I'm throwing in nonstop because it was.
Wait, are these all your number 10?
Yeah.
What, Taken 2 and 3 nonstop? Well, I mean, I would put them as the same movie. They are all the same.
That's
movie.
what I'm saying. And nonstop.
Yeah.
Nonstop's Taken.
Wait.
Did you want to put Walk
Taken
Among the
3.
Tombstones in there
Huh?
as well?
Huh?
Walk Among the Tombstones. That's a Liam Neeson movie.
I didn't see that one.
Same
Taken 3.
Run all
Taken
night.
Hey, man.
Taj, you edit.
Let me tell you something. Okay, I think after all these episodes, you should know me. Like, if it's a sequel, the bar is so low that I will watch it until it ends.
That's a limbo bar.
Yeah, that's a limo bar. But hey, they had the same people in it. That's like 99% of it for me in that way. In terms of, it got worse as it went along, and it was, But this is action. This is as long as there's people dying and getting blown up and all that stuff, and it's Liam Neeson doing what he does.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, like that. What else was it going to be for Taken 3 after Taken 2? So that's for me. Yeah. So
I'm glad you said that because that's my number 10 is Hardcore Henry, which is just people getting blown up. I've rewatched this movie and I actually don't like rewatching it because the story is so bad. Ewan McGregor as the bad guy. The whole from the first 5-10 minutes and the last 20 have nothing to do with why I like this movie. The middle, where it's a first person action shooter, there's a little bit of comedy in there. I thought it was just interestingly shot, and for action, I feel like it's going to start off how my list is going to feel.
It was groundbreaking at that time in terms of the way it was shot.
And I haven't seen a movie like that yet.
Yeah.
I want to give one more, just say something. That there's one movie that's not on my list that I know everybody's like probably gonna fundamentally disagree with me, and I have no hate towards this movie. It's just a movie that I didn't feel like I liked as much as everybody else, which was Mad Max Fury Road. It's probably my second most unpopular opinion of this decade, besides not loving Interstellar. Those are two movies that I personally just don't love, which again, I'm not hating on them or anything. So yeah, I just want to
liked it. It wasn't on my list.
What?
Mad Max.
Oh yeah, there you go. But yeah, so my number 10 is Edge of Tomorrow, which Taj has repeatedly said he's a sucker for the formula of.
God.
And yeah, I mean, Edge of Tomorrow. Yeah, it's a really good movie. I mean, Tom Cruise has really done such a great job in action movies this decade. He's been in like at least 8 of them that are like genuinely good, and that's more than I can say for like 95% of other actors. He's done a really good job. He always tries to one-up himself, but in this movie, he's not, putting his life in danger behind the scenes. He's just doing CGI, but it's some really good CGI and some really good action. The beach sequence is just really well done. The action's so fun, but it's also really cool to watch it kind of transform each time and have to kind of mend each thing. It's almost like a maze in a way. It's constantly moving, but each turn you have to take, and then there's like a new obstacle, and it's just constantly trying to almost fix itself. And that's something I really like about this movie. Emily Blunt's also really good in it, and it's just besides the last like 20 minutes, I'd probably say like it's a perfect action movie. But the last 20 minutes, I don't like quite as much as the rest. But it's still a really good movie.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. I tried to. I kept Edge of Tomorrow because I didn't want to keep repeating myself for the viewers.
like the movie,
you know.
Huh? Well, I had it in sci-fi. I've had it in everything that I could have it in, but you guys know my love for it. Number 9 for me was Atomic Blonde. It was kind of the female John Wick in a way, and Charlize Theron did an incredible job, not only producing it but also acting in it, and the action sequences in itself are very well done, and the fact that she's doing a lot of them was very refreshing. And I don't know, I was gonna say something about the '80s, but because takes place in the '80s as well, so there's a lot of stuff in there that I just really loved. But Atomic Blonde is something that if you want to see a fun action movie.
My number 9, I liked Atomic Blonde, but it's not on my list.
Yeah.
But a fun action movie for me this might be one of the worst movies that I actually like, and I've seen multiple times. Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing. It's so bad. I know. The story, not very cool. They definitely tried to do an Inception, Shutter Island type of thing with it. But the reason why I like it is because it has fantastical action sequences. And the music is bad, but I think it fits the story and the vibe of it pretty well. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's just 4 or 5 different action sequences with the 4 girls going in and basically blowing stuff up and messing people up. So that's why it's my number 9.
Yeah, so my number 9 is Baby Driver. I really like this movie. I think it's smart and stylish. It's also one of the most, I think, originally crafted movies I've seen in a long time. Everything about it just feels like it has Edgar Wright's directorial fingerprints, and that's something I really like about it. The editing's awesome. I feel like it probably should have won Best Editing. Like when I watch Dunkirk, I don't see it having better editing, but that's just my opinion. I also think the sound editing probably deserved an Oscar. But besides that, the way it uses the songs to actually sort of guide each action sequence and act as a comment for everything to move through, the way that each action sequence feels like it's almost trying to top one another is really cool. I think the driving stunts, the fact that they're all pretty practical for the most part. If you watch behind the scenes, you can see a lot of the cool stuff they did. That's something that's a big deal for me. I think when a movie goes practical with its action, it gets like automatic points for me because so many movies are too lazy to do that.
Did you see Need for Speed with Aaron Paul?
What about it?
All their racing stunts are practical. I'm pretty sure they had to go to driving academy for it.
I wasn't comparing them.
I'm just saying, it's pretty crazy stuff.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, I really like this movie. The performances are all really good. Jamie Foxx is probably my favorite in this movie. You kind of hate him, but you also enjoy it when he dies. You kind of miss him too. And it's just a really fun movie. And it's probably one of the best soundtracks in any action movie ever. Like, it's really, really good. Everybody's good in this movie. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Number 8 for me is Kingsman, The Secret Service. And really, I remember watching this movie. It came out on Valentine's Day, and it was between that and 50 Shades of Grey, and it was not even an option. And this movie really surprised me because I didn't really know what to expect. It had, an edge to it that was different than Bond, but it was unique, and it was shot uniquely. And Matthew Vaughn, there's so much about this movie that I liked, and revisiting it reminded me, okay, I still love this kind of style, and I still love this movie. And Samuel Jackson doing I don't even know what kind of performance it was, but it was a great performance. But it was his lisp or whatever it was I was watching it for the whole movie thinking, is he going to slide out of it or not? It's like, that's an interesting choice, but it's a fun movie. And that's what I consider action is like either it's going to have an incredible story, or it's going to be a fun action movie. And this was a fun action movie.
I agree. But my number 8 was Sylvester Stallone, Jason Statham. It's the Expendables, Like, as soon as you put together that type of dream team, Dolph Lundgren, like I've seen a lot of those movies with a lot of these guys. I'm not proud of that, but this is an awesome movie with a lot of action. Jason Statham beat somebody up in a basketball. Yeah. That was in a court. That was awesome. They have some really good scenes here, and I wanted to put 2 and 3 on here because when they added Wesley Snipes, I was like, yes. Yeah. But they're just not as good as the first one. But they would be on there if I could fit them.
Yeah. Okay.
You should say how many of the Escape Plan movies you've seen.
I've seen all of them except for the last one. I turned off. Yeah. It was really bad. 50 Cent's in like 2, and it's like, why?
Yeah.
It's such a bad role, man.
Yeah, so my number 8 is Lone Survivor. And when I want to give this full disclosure, when I put a military movie on this, I feel like in some ways it's a little disrespectful to call it action because obviously it's highbrow than a movie like Baby Driver or even Expendables. You know, those are a different type of movie crafted for more of an audience, and it's kind of, I guess, disrespectful to put them next to each other. But I think there are 3 types of war movies. You can have an action, a drama, or a thriller. So I really put movies that I just feel like had great action. And that's what I loved about this movie. All the actors worked really hard to do it. You can look at the behind the scenes, which is really cool. But the sound design in this movie is excellent. The fact that they train the actors gives it such an edge of realism. It's really well shot too. I like how the camera moves up and down the hills, and it's really cool because some action movies, actually a little bit like Edge of Tomorrow, pretty much have one thing for the whole movie, and that centers around. And when you have action, you constantly have to just be one-upping yourself to make the audience stay interested. And that, I think, any action movie that's able to truly do that knows exactly how to do action. And this movie does it so well because it's a really kind of small area relatively, and when you watch the movie and you see kind of this tug of war of just pulling the sides and getting the high ground and trying to fight back for it, it's just really fun to watch, and it's also, you know, pretty intense at times. So I really like this movie. I think the gunfight is one of the best I've ever seen, and everybody's really good. Again, not just because they're trained, but also because they do some really good acting, and I just really like this movie.
Cool.
So, yeah.
My number 7 is it's kind of a 2-4. It's Skyfall and Spectre, but it's basically Bond. It's Skyfall more than Spectre. It was a different departure for like they had set up Daniel Craig to be this like different Bond, and I wasn't honestly on board with that. And so Skyfall and Spectre are kind of like a compromise in a way. It's almost like the old Bond. There's hints of the old Bond in there, and that's when I started kind of coming back to the fold in that way. And so I don't know if you guys know, I love James Bond series. Like I've seen every James Bond movie. You know, I don't have a favorite because they all have their own unique, you know, like
Not all James Bond are created equal.
No, they're not all created
In Her
equal.
Majesty's Secret Service.
But Roger Moore, like for me, is like the cheeky James Bond. Like he's like, you know, he's like the comedic one of it. And I just don't, I grew up in that era. So like for me, he became my James Bond until I saw Sean Connery. Mm-hmm. And then I liked Sean Connery. And so, yeah, they're not all created equal.
Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, yeah. And so.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's like, you know, I remember Remington Steele, which he was, you know, there's a TV show so I was actually like, oh, he's the perfect Bond when they picked him. Mm. But it's like, it's interesting because it's like, you know, Bond is like a formula and they try to shake it up a little, but with this, there was a little back to form in a way, and I like that. And so that's why that's my number 7, just because Bond had to make my list no matter what.
See, my problem with Bond is I feel like it's about more than just action for me, so that's why I couldn't really, like, these are just purely balls to the wall action.
Okay.
And this is where my list, I think, starts to get better, and it's Kingsman is my number 7. Okay. And the reason why this made that list is because I think it's interestingly shot. It's got a nice humor to it in a way that was definitely fresh for an action movie, but it had to make my list because of the church scene, which is probably one of the craziest action scenes in a movie. Yeah. So that's why it's my number 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to have to disagree with Taj a little bit about Skyfall being like a callback to the old James Bond, because I have Skyfall at number 7.
Okay.
But I actually think Skyfall is the best James Bond movie because of how it takes a lot of I'm not going to say themes because there's not that many themes in old James Bond movies, but it takes a lot of just the charm of those movies, kind of morphs that into an idea of mortality for James Bond, and then also adds some really good action sequences, and plus has like by far the best cinematography in any James Bond movie. Some of the best I've ever seen in an action movie. I wish more like the high class cinematographers would work on action movies. I feel like not enough of them do that. But when they do,
it's about fighting.
Well, I mean, but there's like that cheapens the impact of what a film can do. And when you watch a movie like Skyfall, you see how important cinematography can be in any genre. But I love this movie because I feel like it really does feel like a maturity of a franchise. I didn't like Spectre as much. I didn't really hate it, but I was sort of a little uninterested in it. But this film kept me engaged the whole time. It's got one of the best openings in a James Bond movie. Got one of the best title sequences. And as you said, Taj, there's no way I could have made this without respecting James Bond.
You have to.
And this feels like such a great swan song. It's not his final movie, but it could have easily been, and I wouldn't have been mad. It feels like such a respect to his character. It goes back to his roots, which was something people had been talking about for so long. Like, oh, what's James Bond's childhood like, and what did he do? And it's kind of giving a new life to a franchise that's been around for like decades now. And it also has some. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and say this. It has the best James Bond villain ever, and Raul Silva, played by Javier Bardem. I used to like Goldfinger a little more because he's got that classic Bond feel, and he was my favorite. But Javier Bardem is definitely a better villain. He's so good in this movie, and everybody's really good. And it just feels, I think in all James Bond movies, even the ones where he's in danger, he always sort of has an infallible feeling, and this movie kind of stripped that away from him. I really, at parts in this movie, kind of wondered to myself, can he make it through this? Can he survive? Can he win? And, even though he does end up winning, there's cost to it. So this really feels like the maturity and full kind of crescendo of the franchise. It all comes together in this movie. So I love that movie.
Nice. Number 6 for me is a movie I actually saw recently, and I heard about it a lot, and I was like, okay, let me check this one out. It's Alita Battle Angel, which...
What you think? What you thought about it? Because I just saw it recently, too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was because I love Japanese anime in general, and I was just like, okay, why haven't I seen this? I like Robert Rodriguez, and something about it told me to stay away, but then I started seeing reviews on it, and the fans were like, oh, no, it's a great movie. It just didn't get its due. And I really enjoyed this movie. I really enjoyed... not only the effects and everything like that, but the action was nonstop. It was definitely not for kids in terms of, but it was really well shot, really well done, and I just liked it. I mean, it was super entertaining from beginning to end, and I had really no expectations, and I was trying to figure out where to place it, but I think number 6 is perfect for it. So I really like that idea and that relationship between I forgot the inventors,
Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
I think
Waltz. Yeah, Christopher Waltz, and Alita. It's like just the father-daughter relationship. I don't know. It's a trope that's always done in movies, but it was something about this that was just unique and different.
I agree. I felt like there's something missing from this. I really don't like the love interest with the boy and what happened to him. I thought that was just corny.
Yeah.
But I wish they focused more on the moon scene when she was on there, and like if they had more of that sci-fi element to it, that would be really cool.
Is probably gonna do.
If they do, then that would be really awesome.
Well,
but
they were hinting.
It had a lot of elements in there, but it just didn't land it for me.
Okay.
My number 6 is The Equalizer with my man Denzel. Yeah. This movie was just awesome with the slow motion action, his cool, confident walk. He was a very cool guy, and I think. For me, it was weird to see Denzel do a movie like this and to do it as well as he did. So I'm really happy with it at its position.
Especially when he times it with his clock. Yeah. I like that.
And the way he kind of like Home Depot'd it, put it together. It was really cool.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so my number 6, I have Captain America: Civil War. I tried not to put too many superhero movies, but also, I just didn't feel like... I feel like the ones I put on deserved it. Because, again, I judge it by volume and quality of each sequence, and I feel like everybody talks about the airport sequence in this movie because of how flashy it is. And it deserves it, but the first 2 action sequences in this movie, particularly the one on the stairway in Germany, are really, really good. And then the final sequence in this movie at the silo with Iron Man is probably the best... speaking in terms of how it's just executed, probably the best third act in any Marvel movie. It's really well done. Every blow feel like it lands, but also you just never want them to hit each other. And every time they hit each other, it's like you're just going further down and down and ruining your friendship. And every action sequence in this movie is great. I talked about this in the superhero video, and I talked about how it feels almost like the movie's at an impasse and just nobody can move and everybody's arguing, and that's really fun, and I enjoy that part of the movie, and I love what they do with every character in this film. But speaking just from an action perspective, I think this movie really was a great way to show the world that the Russo brothers weren't just a one-trick pony with Winter Soldier. It wasn't like, oh, you did one great movie and then you kind of made a second one. It's how a lot of people felt for, I guess, Jon Favreau with Iron Man 2. It was like you just couldn't top yourself. But this movie, I think, is such a great sequel to both the Avengers and Captain America and Iron Man in a little way. And it's just the action's really well done. Some people don't like the shaky cam, but I feel like the shaky cam's not active in the superhero battles of this movie. It's only active really in the actual human battles, and it's more necessary there than I think people would say is, because I think that the chase scene underground and then the scene in Africa are both just really well done sequences, and I just really like this movie. So.
When Bucky and Cap are fighting Iron Man at the end, that for me is like,
it's a difficult scene to shoot too.
Probably the best action scene.
I was like, what? Like I really and you had already seen so many incredible stuff in that movie, but then that's like
the movie with probably the least. The movie or the scene with the least people was like the most impactful. You know, every blow just feel it. And then they got that shot from the comic. That was beautiful. So yeah.
Number 5 for me it's one that you guys kind of introduced me to the world of, and it's
Godzilla.
It's literally Jackie Chan movies on steroids.
It's not The Foreigner, is it?
No, it's The Raid.
It's The Raid, exactly.
It's
The Raid Redemption and the Raid 2. It's like those two movies to me opened up my eyes to, is this really like, are they really doing this? And I used to do that about Jackie Chan, you know, with his own stunts and doing certain things. But then seeing this and just seeing the choreography, just seeing the stunts and just seeing the action, it was something that I had never seen before in terms of like where, you know, we would use not only stunt doubles, but we would use CG characters or whatever. These guys were doing it, and I loved it. And it was literally every, like, because where it takes place, every like story was something different in terms of that. And I don't know, I just really love this movie. I really love the action of it, and you guys are missing out if you haven't seen any of the raids. Like, you're missing out.
Please do a third one.
Yeah,
Please.
they need to.
Have to.
My number 5 is John Wick. And the reason why I liked it a little more than Equalizer is because I felt 2 and 3 were way stronger than Equalizer 2, which was pretty weak. And Keanu Reeves' action with his gun, knife, and handwork is just crazy, you know? And then I feel like there was a lot of great scenes with the club scene, and he starts messing people up, and they have the music time to it. This is one of those action movies where it speaks action, you know? And I think it does it in not too bad of a way either. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to say it's a great movie, but it's not a bad movie, and it's entertaining to watch for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you a little story. I was with my friend, and we were like kind of bored, and we were like, oh, we should see a movie. And, you know, we were like, what's out? You know, it's 2014, and like, I don't know, nothing came out. And then I was like, oh, what's this movie, John Wick? Let's go see it. So I'm in this movie, like 20 minutes in, and I'm like, oh, it's a drama. I had no idea. I didn't like have a phone or anything, so I didn't know about the trailers or whatever. And I'm sitting there, and then they kill his dog, and I was like, oh no. And then he like goes down in his little basement, and I was like, wait, is this movie transforming? Yeah. And then 30 minutes later, my mouth is on the floor because I was stunned at how good this movie was. This is one of... Oh, also, I saw this movie, I think, 3 more times after that in theaters. Honestly, that's how much I like this movie. I memorized every single piece of choreography. I've only ever done that for, like, Revenge of the Sith, and they don't even have, like, that much hand-to-hand in this movie. They have gun, and I was, like, memorizing it because I was just so stunned by every sequence of this movie. It's so fun to watch. Keanu Reeves, like you said, was fantastic because of how dedicated he was to the role. The dude trained for so long. I think if you put every actor ever in a gunfight, he'd probably win, discounting the people who are in the actual military, because he's dangerous, you know, if you watch the behind-the-scenes videos. And he's just so good in this movie as this looming presence, but he's the protagonist, and he feels like a villain in the way. And then when they show, like, them talking about him like he's this mythic legend, it's almost like he's Darth Vader, and then he comes in the room, and you're like, let's see what he's got, and then he kills everybody in, like, the most brutal way possible. You're like, yeah, he's got it. But also, it never truly makes him infallible. He gets shot sometimes, he gets hit, and it's like, well, you know, he's beatable, but he also has a certain tenacity and drive that's not going to let him lose. And this movie, the club sequence in this movie is one of my favorite action sequences ever.
I love the songs.
I memorized every little piece of because there's a part in the song where he's like, duh, 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 and he shoots a bullet on each like little piece of and all that type of stuff. That's great stuff. That's great sound editing. That's great choreography. That's great just filmmaking. And the way that kind of progresses through each floor of the club is a great just part of the movie. But also the scene in his house, the scene at the end, the scene where he's like sniping people as they're playing video games. Like, I could just go on, but I really do think this is like one of those movies that you should not tell somebody about.
This
Let
is the
them watch
Matrix
it.
of our generation.
I don't know about that. I think it's a completely different type of movie.
Of course, but
I mean,
it's
I think Inception's
action-based.
a little more comparable to The Matrix. But anyway, I
They
think
made a lot
this is
more
a movie.
Matrixes and they were worse.
Okay, but this is a movie that I want to show somebody, not tell them what it's about, and then just watch their reaction because it's that good. So yeah.
My number 4. It's gonna feel weird going from John Wick to what my number 4 is.
Is it Happy Death Day?
No, it's not Happy Death Day. It's Fast 5.
Oh, wow.
Fast 5 for me, just full disclosure, I've watched every Fast and Furious movie that's been put to celluloid. And I've watched them out of order, in order, and it's just... So there's something about Fast 5. It turns kind of into a heist movie more than a racing movie. But Fast 5, there's something uniquely different. Obviously, takes place in Brazil, which is a plus in that way. But it introduces The Rock, to the series, and it's just it has the, no pun intended, it's like a shot of adrenaline that just basically kickstarts it and kind of gave it the gas to go another couple of movies.
Shot of nitrous.
Yeah.
I get the pun.
But it's like, I don't know, something about Fast and Furious. I love heist movies in general, like how they're gonna pull it off, and I didn't expect that to be in the Fast and Furious. And
Yeah, because this was like the first movie where they transitioned from street racing to like,
and they brought everyone back.
superheroes.
Like they brought, like, there's a lot of callbacks to like, hey, this person's, he's back, she's back, Gal Gadot, is, and this is a small tidbit, but when Gal Gadot was up for Wonder Woman, I was really happy because I remembered her from the Fast and Furious. But everyone's like, who's this person? I'm like, oh, no, she'll be perfect. I always thought she'd be perfect for it, and she was perfect for it. But it's only because I had seen the Fast and Furious movies. I'm like, oh, she looks the part. And so, yeah, it's Fast 5, man. Check it out.
I couldn't put the Fast and Furious on my action list because as far as action movies go, I feel like there are better action movies, but I love all of them.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not on my list. It's an honorary
Yeah,
mention.
you have like a safe going down the streets of Brazil, like
Oh, it was definitely crazy.
Like, I mean,
That's got it for you. That's
Fast
right
and
there.
Furious 6 is even crazier than that.
Yeah, that's I know.
Don't they drive a car through 3 different buildings in Dubai? Is that
Which is
7?
the one? That's 7.
I
But
think it's
which one do they have a tank in? They got a tank? That's the 5th one?
That's 6.
Jeez.
I think. I don't know. It gets crazier, as you can see.
Yeah.
But my number 4, and it's actually going to be, it's the only war movie I have on my list because I feel like war is a genre completely different.
Yeah.
But this movie is not based on a true story, so I didn't feel too bad putting it in here. Okay. It was Fury. I thought the tank battles in here were incredible. The final stand scene and the way it was lit with the fire and at night. It's just one of those movies that I'm not going to say it's one of the best war movies I've seen. I think there are some that are more emotional and more are better made, but I really like this as a fictional war film, and I think it was really well done.
Nice.
Yeah, so my number 4 is The Raid. I actually saw The Raid 2 before The Raid. Prince made me go to the theater when we all saw it, and I was like, "What is?" I was probably too young to see it, but I remember just being like, kind of like you said, open to a whole new world.
It was.
And then I eventually bought it at home and watched them, and I've watched both of the Raids probably at least 5 times each, and every time I watch it, I find new things. This is pretty much the definition of perfect choreography. This movie is just pulse-poundingly brutal. It's so frenetic. It's always moving. Has a constant mobility with each, like you were saying, each floor of it. It's a little bit like Dread, actually, just with better choreography. The thing is too is that I think that the way it introduces a villain in what's the name, Mad Dog, but it makes him kind of wait. And you kind of know he's the man, but they don't actually. It's sort of like if you have Luke fight Vader and you lose, and then in Return of the Jedi there's a bigger showdown, but they never actually fought. It's he's strong, and Rama, who's our protagonist, is gonna have to fight him, but we never see them really kind of test each other, and that's something that I really like. But everything about this movie is fantastic. It always feels brutal. It gives you that feeling of being in a real fight. It has a constant energy to it, but it also never sacrifices its coolness. It always feels cool and like an action movie, but it also has a certain intimacy to it and a sort of realisticness that I feel like no action movie can ever match, because you can't get both of those things unless you're like a god at doing action. And Gareth Evans, who wrote, directed, edited, and co-choreographed this movie, he's like the general. He does this movie would not succeed without him, and this movie's pretty much perfect in every way. I think out of every movie on this list, this is the closest thing I have to a perfect action movie. I just like the other three a little more.
Number 3 for me, it's a movie that I saw in theaters and I didn't know what to expect. I was a fan of the series, but the series was so long ago. But visually, it was stunning. The directing was stunning in it, and that was Mad Max Fury Road. It's something that, as someone that's a director, it's something visually that I hadn't seen in a long time, and had me wondering how did they do this in a way. And it was a chase from nonstop from the beginning to the end in terms of just, it took me on a journey, and it's one of those movies I saw multiple times in the theater because I just wanted to experience it again. And I didn't feel comfortable putting a top action list together without honoring Mad Max in that way, just because it was, for me, brilliantly done.
Yeah, I really like Mad Max. Tom Hardy's the man.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. My number 3 is a movie I've seen so many times, like ever since it came out. I think the soundtrack is so well done. I love the way it's shot, and Benicio del Toro is fantastic, and it's Sicario.
Yeah.
You consider that an action movie?
I do consider that. And the reason why it's considered an action, because I knew we were going to have this conversation, is because there's not a lot of movies that have stealth action. And Sicario has that level of stealth action that I like to see, especially with the end scene. I don't know how to explain it. It was that off-grid, unsanctioned type of blacklist CIA action that I was looking for. And I think that the way this movie was shot, the shootout when they're in the border and like how it's very quick. And granted, it wouldn't be on my list if it had less action. It doesn't have that much action, but because of the stealthiness and the way it's shot, it's my number 3. Cool.
My number 3 is Hacksaw Ridge. In a time where it seems like we've moved past some of the old-fashioned, very sentimental war movies that used to flourish in Hollywood, this movie comes back and says, no, that is not dead if you do it right. And this movie it has smoke-covered battlefields, has dead bodies everywhere. It's got some brutal intimacy. It's hard to watch at times, but it's seriously one of the most breathtaking sequences I've ever seen in a film. It's really well directed. It's really well shot. But more than that,
too.
Yeah, it's well. It feels like it's one of those movies, like I was saying about Lone Survivor, that has a very small space of action, but in the constant movement for kind of control of the battlefield. Because in this movie, it's a war, so there's an actual sort of objective to capture the Hacksaw Ridge. But in watching that, you're always kind of biting your nails at who's going to reclaim the side, and when they get more control, are they going to keep pushing, or is the enemy going to come back with something that they never expected? And I just loved watching action in this movie. It was also very kind of different at times because there were times where it's just war, people running, people getting shot, but then it gets into the stealth sequences and him having to hide through all the Japanese soldiers. And it's just and also the first half of the movie, which is drama, because both this and Lone Survivor, now that I'm thinking about it, are pretty similar in that the first half is pretty much pure just setup, and then the second half is pretty much the entire thing is just a battle, which isn't a bad thing. It's just something interesting. And I think that the drama part of this movie, while not quite as good as the action's really good. Hugo Weaving's like fantastic as his father. Andrew Garfield's really good, and everybody in this movie is really good. But the battle sequence it's breathtaking. Sometimes this movie does have that feeling of like sentimentality that is sometimes a little obvious, but I still love this movie. It's incredible.
Yeah. Cool. My number 2 movie is it's the Mission Impossibles, basically the Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, and Fallout. And I had to lump them together because, in all honesty, it's one of the few series that I will, like, if I hear another one is coming out, I will be there and I will buy a ticket on opening day because I love Tom Cruise in this role. I love Mission Impossible in general. I love the whole spy espionage / twist at the end, if there is one. And it's just, I don't know. I really love this movie. And it's not the gimmick of, Tom Cruise does his own stunts kind of thing. It's just in general, I love Simon Pegg in his comedic tones and his timing. And it's just, I don't know. I watched this series. I've watched it plenty of times. And Brad Bird, in my opinion, like going from animation to live action, did such an incredible job, that I'm a sucker for Mission Impossible, so I really can't say anything bad about it. China knows I love these kind of. She likes them too, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm not such a fan. Like
No,
1 and 2, obviously great, but I don't know if I follow the cruise like that.
Oh yeah.
My number 2 is The Raid 2, and the reason why is I really liked The Raid 1, and I think The Raid 2 was a great sequel to it. The prison scene is an incredible fight sequence. I like how you get to see more of the underworld that's in there, and also I feel it's difficult to keep a story interesting. Like obviously the action's very, very well done, and it's done fantastically with stunt people or whoever are actually doing it. The actors are, but the story is so interesting because I think it translates well. You know what I mean, and it doesn't really get lost in translation. I like these movies a lot. These are well shot.
Yeah, my number 2 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Which was such a breath of fresh air for Marvel, not just from a filmmaking or story standpoint, but from the fact that the action in this movie has yet to be topped by another superhero movie, in my opinion. I know everybody likes to talk about the Dark Knight trilogy, and they have some great stuff in there, and they definitely do more practical stunts, but I cannot say with a straight face that a single action sequence in the Dark Knight trilogy is as good as the highway sequence in this movie. The final sequence in this movie on the helicarriers, I feel like goes underrated because of how good the highway sequence is, but it's a little higher scale and it's almost as well done as that sequence. But that's not just talking about the excellent car chase, the excellent opening scene on the boat, of course the elevator scene / escape from S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. The movie is chock full of fantastic action sequences. They're all jam-packed with details. If you kind of slow down, you can watch, because they match Captain America's speed with the action, which I was so afraid that they wouldn't do. But the fact that this guy doesn't move at the speed of normal people, the fact that they realize that, and the fact that they use that for their sequences was fantastic. The fighting in this movie is what I hope to see in a Batman movie one day. I think they have yet to do that, but I'm hoping in the future. But I think what they do with Captain America in this movie is absolutely excellent. Again, like John Wick, he doesn't feel truly infallible, even if he's better than everybody individually. Well, the Winter Soldier's like on the same par, but he always feels like there's a new kind of thing to overcome, and it never feels like the action is just surmountable, if that is a word. I know insurmountable is a word, but I think that the action sequences in this movie are truly a standout in the superhero genre because of how well they just kind of flow between each one another, how the soundtrack is, because it's a little Bourne-esque. If you listen to it, the soundtrack and just the movie itself feels a lot like a Bourne movie, but everything about this movie is just quality action filmmaking, and it's really good. I don't really know what else to say. So yeah.
Nice. Well, my number 1 movie is it's Who Do You Hire to Kill the Boogeyman? It is John Wick. It's now I put these together because this honestly for me it would have been 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
So it's like I didn't want that to be my list. But I remember seeing John Wick in the theaters and just being like, wow, this is just. I didn't know what ride I was going on, and I haven't got off the ride yet in terms of John, then 2 came out, and it's the building of the world, it's the world building of it, it's the action of it, it's the characters, it's like, I never thought, Keanu would be born for another role, but he's like born to play this role as well, because he was always, this is the Matrix, he's born for the Matrix, and now it's like he created another character. And there's very few people that can do that. Harrison Ford's another one that can be Indiana Jones and Han Solo at the same time. And so for me, I just think it's a testament to Keanu, and I just love. There's something about these movies that I just love, and if they make a 4th one, which I'm sure they will, I will be right there. And I know we have a difference of opinion, but
if they make a 10th one, I'm still gonna see.
It's just it's like I mean it's like a video game. He's just going against the odds, and it all because of a stupid dog is what the whole thing is, and but we understand as dog lovers. It's like no, that's the crossing the line of it. So
my number 1 movie is The Raid. So Raid 2 is number 2, Raid 1 is 1. And the reason why is I feel like this is the best action movie I've ever seen. I love the principle of going from the ground floor, working your way up to try and get the kingpin. It's close quarters. They go from gunfights to hand. They're flipping down stairs. The camera's following them. I feel like Dredd tried to do that when he went to take over the super tower. but because of its sheer size and it was just him, it didn't feel as great as it did with the Raid, the first one. And I mean, you don't even need without subtitles. This movie is fantastic. You can understand what's going on.
Actually, very good.
This movie is incredible, and this is the pinnacle of action for me.
Yeah, so my number one is a movie that I'd probably consider to be a perfect action movie, and that's The Raid 2. I like The Raid 2 a little bit more than 1. I'll explain why. I think that The Raid 2 shows maturity on a filmmaker. I love when you can watch watch a first movie from a director, and everything about it is great. You're like, I love this, I love that. And then all the stuff you loved in the second movie feels like it was juiced up, but it never lost its charm. And that is how you do a sequel. This is like a perfect sequel. It's more intricate than the first movie in terms of a plot and narrative. It's smarter than the first movie. It's more maturely choreographed. It's got longer takes sometimes. And one thing that I actually like about this movie is that it uses more mundane locations. It uses garages and restaurants and bathroom cells, or not bathroom stalls.
Yeah, and
discos. Every sequence in this movie feels like it tops the last, and that is how to do action. One little gripe I have about John Wick 1 is that it never tops the club sequence. I think they have yet to do that. And in the first movie, self-contained wise, they never topped the club sequence. Their climax was as good. But the climax in the kitchen in this movie between Rama and, I'm forgetting the guy's name right now, I'm sorry. But that is probably, for just me personally, the best hand-to-hand sequence I've ever seen.
Or even the subway with the bat lady and the hammers.
Yeah, the hammer. Yeah, no, everything about this movie screams quality and action. The choreography is on a different plateau. Everybody I've shown this movie, even if they don't like foreign movies, well, this is more of an action movie, but they love this movie because if you don't like the action in this movie, you probably just don't like action movies. You don't watch this and it doesn't, like, if this doesn't get your blood boiling and say, like, I want to get in a fight right now or I want to watch more action movies, I just think you're not a fan of action movies, and that's okay. But I'm definitely a fan of action movies, and from the moment I first saw this movie, I was just stunned. Plus, the movie's pretty gory. I mean, they show a guy's like face getting shot.
Burned off too.
They do show that in the grill in the restaurant. They have like one of the.
And don't forget all the blood from all the knives and stuff.
It's a gore movie, but I genuinely think that I really can't say too much about this movie besides the fact that I think it's a perfect sequel. I think that I've watched the kitchen scene for this movie probably 20 times now, and every time I want to fight somebody right after, it makes me so excited and energetic. It's how you do a perfect action movie. This is easily in my top 5, maybe top 3 action movies of all time, and it's so like good. The definition of a perfect action movie. This is one of the best 1-2 punches of a movie ever, and what Bong Joon-ho said about at the Golden Globes was a great point. If you overcome that 1-inch barrier, you'll be introduced to a lot of great cinema. And this is a movie that I watch and say to America, your move, because I've yet to see a hand-to-hand movie made from American studios that is even close to this movie. So, yeah, good luck. But yeah, that is our list for the best action movies. If you have lists, let us know down below whose list was your favorite. And yeah, thanks for watching, and like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.